Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation regarding OSHA regulatory updates. The purpose of this video is to provide a short overview of recent OSHA regulatory changes. As I address several regulatory changes from an overview perspective, some regulations and their implications will likely be missed. Please understand this video is for general awareness, and I'd be happy to answer detailed questions via email or by phone, which is listed here on the slide. Please don't hesitate to contact me with questions. When developing this presentation, I avoided using opinion commentary and utilized Osha.gov as my single resource. Leavitt Group and myself appreciate your business. I hope you find this presentation to be beneficial to your organization. The following topics will be covered in today's presentation: OSHA penalty increases, OSHA 300 log and the electronic submission rule, injury and illness reporting, general industry walking and working surfaces, and construction confined space. This chart depicts the regulation that is applicable to the discussed topic and when that particular regulation became effective. Several of the discussed regulations contain phase-in dates for employers to become compliant to the regulation. I'll do my best to highlight specific dates of when employers must be in compliance with the specific regulation. Additional resources that support the topics discussed today are readily available by visiting Osha.gov. This website is often overlooked and underutilized. Please take the time to visit the website to further research the topics discussed in this presentation or any other topics related to OSHA regulations. OSHA penalty increases. OSHA has increased the maximum allowable penalties by 78%. These changes were implemented on August 1st, 2016. Each state-run OSHA program is required to adopt penalty increases that are at least as effective as the federal dollar amounts. This means that each state plan will have the same penalty structure as federal OSHA, or potentially higher dollar amounts if they so choose. The last adjustment to penalty increases was in 1990. Due to inflation, OSHA plans to increase the penalty amounts on an annual basis. The annual penalty increases will be based on the Consumer Price Index. Serious, other than serious, posting requirements, and failure to abate citations all carry a maximum citation of $12,471. This is an increase from the previously enforced $7,000 amount. Willful and repeated citations have increased from $70,000 to $124,709 per violation. Electronic submission injury tracking application. Employers are now required to submit their OSHA 300 logs online. OSHA's portal to submit the required documentation went live on August 1st, 2017 and is available by visiting Osha.gov. This application is known as the Injury Tracking Application, or ITA. Please note the different documentation submission requirements for employers with over 250 employees versus employers with 20 to 249 employees. By December 2017, both establishment sizes will be required to submit only their OSHA 300A form for injuries that occurred in the previous 2016 calendar year. By July 1st, 2018, establishments with over 250 employees will be required to submit the 300A, 300, and 301 form by July 2018 for injury and illnesses experienced in the 2017 calendar year. This document submission requirement will continue for every year afterwards, starting in 2018. Establishments with 20 to 249 employees will only be required to submit their OSHA 300A form. As with the larger establishments, this submission requirement will continue for every year going forward. The submission deadlines are scheduled to move to March 2nd, 2019. March 2nd, 2019 will remain the deadline starting in 2019 and going on forward for every year afterwards. The employee count is determined by establishment, which OSHA defines as a single physical location where business is conducted or where services or industrial operations are performed. A firm may be comprised of one or more establishments. For example, a pizza franchise has multiple restaurants throughout the state. Each restaurant location meets the OSHA definition of an establishment and would need to submit their own OSHA 300 log. Several firms or companies will be required to submit multiple OSHA 300 logs using the online injury tracking application. OSHA has also established exemptions to record keeping, which are establishments with 10 or fewer employees. There's also a list of 80 industries categorized by their NAICS code. A list of these exempt industries is available at OSHA.gov or by contacting myself. It is important to note that record-keeping exemptions can be revoked by OSHA or Bureau of Labor Statistics if you are asked to do so in writing. So even though you may be on the list of the 80 exempt industries or have under 10 employees, it is possible that OSHA or Bureau of Labor Statistics may ask you in writing that you now have to maintain records. All employees need to do some research to understand how your organization's NAICS code applies to the OSHA record-keeping regulations. You can get clarification on your organization's NAICS code and how it applies to the record-keeping regulations by contacting myself, and I'd be happy to research what your NAICS code is and how the record-keeping rule applies to your particular industry. Injury and illness reporting. OSHA expanded what type of work-related employee injuries employers are required to report to OSHA. The injury and illness reporting criteria requires the following injuries to be reported. Employees killed on the job must be reported within 8 hours. Employee suffers a work-related hospitalization must be reported within 24 hours. Employee suffers a work-related amputation must be reported within 24 hours. Employee suffers a work-related loss of an eye must be reported within 24 hours. Injuries can be reported to OSHA by calling 1-800-OSHA or by calling your assigned local regional office, which can be easily found on the internet. You are also allowed to report injuries by visiting OSHA.gov. Please note that workplace fatalities is the only criteria which requires the employer to report within 8 hours. All other reporting criteria allows the employer 24 hours to report the injury. Before reporting the injury to OSHA, it is recommended that the employer have basic details regarding the incident before calling it in. Basic information should include a brief summary of the incident, date and time the incident took place, name or names of the injured employee, and the current location of the injured employee. General industry walking and working surfaces. This is a robust standard and set of regulations, and not all the topics will be covered in this presentation. It is highly likely that your organization will need to conduct research to determine the exact implications of these standards on your specific workplace and operation. Major highlights to this standard include fall protection flexibility, which we'll discuss in greater detail on the next slide. General industry scaffold requirements now adhere to construction regulations, which can be found in 1926 subpart L. There will no longer be two separate standards that regulate scaffolding. Personal fall arrest systems will be required on fixed ladder systems over 24 feet in length. OSHA determined that wells and cages can no longer be the sole means of fall protection in this type of application. As pictured in this slide, eventually fixed ladders of 24 feet or higher will contain a fall arrest system. This part of the regulation contains phase-in dates, and current fixed ladder systems will be grandfathered in for 20 years. However, employers must equip new fixed ladders with the fall arrest system, as pictured on the slide. Rope descent systems, also known as RDS, are commonly used when washing windows of high skyscraper buildings. This standard allows the use of RDS systems as long as the anchor points are certified and tested to hold at least 5,000 pounds for each employee using the system. For example, 2 employees are on the RDS system, that anchor point must be able to hold 10,000 pounds. Also, the RDS system is restricted to go no higher than 300 feet in height. Body belts are now prohibited to be used as part of a personal fall arrest system. Body belts have been known to cause severe injuries following falls. The new standard requires the use of a much safer harness system as a component of the overall fall arrest system. Fall protection flexibility. This is one of the major changes that I wanted to highlight in greater detail of this new standard. Guardrails are no longer the primary fall protection method. Employers can now assess the job task and adopt the best fitting fall protection methods. This part of the regulation closely mirrors what the construction industry has been doing since 1994. Fall protection technology has made several advancements in the last 20 years, and several applications such as fall protection systems, fall arrest systems, travel restraints, safety nets, and others can be effectively used to prevent falls. A critical element of the fall protection program is to conduct walking work surface inspections. Employers should assess each facility and job site to identify all fall from height hazards and then identify the best method to eliminate or control that hazard. If the fall hazard cannot be eliminated, the employer must identify which fall protection method is best suited to prevent falls in that particular given situation. As you can see from the photos on this slide, all these various applications are applicable given on the situation, meaning you need to decide which system would work best in the situation that you have. Employees must be trained on all fall hazards and how to use fall protection as it is applicable. So if you do start to use fall protection and harnesses and arrest systems and restraints and things of that nature, you are required to conduct training to make sure the employees know how to inspect that system and properly wear that system. Moving on to confined space in the construction regulations. Again, this is confined space in construction, not general industry. I wanted to start off with giving an overview of confined space, and we'll start with the definition. The definition of a confined space is it large enough for a worker to enter it, has limited or restricted means of entry or exit, is not designated for continuous occupancy. Several examples of confined spaces would be a silo, a maintenance access point, storage tank, pipeline, and other things of that nature. Moving on to the specific construction regulations. Construction now has a robust confined space standard. It is important to note that this standard does vary from the general industry confined space standards. The most critical element of confined space compliance is to conduct a simple audit and identify all confined spaces on your job site. After the confined spaces are identified, they must be assessed by a competent person to determine if a hazard exists in that space. Common hazards are hazardous atmosphere, engulfment, entrapment, or any other recognized hazard. If a hazard is identified in that confined space, a confined space permit entry program needs to be implemented. The entry permits and developed operating procedures must clearly identify the applicable hazards and how to eliminate or control them during the entry. So your entry process needs to address specifically what hazards are being or may be in that confined space. Placing signage on identified permit entry confined spaces and restricting access to these areas is also a great way to mitigate risk and prevent injuries. Placing locks on potentially hazardous confined spaces when possible should also be considered by management. Once it is determined that employees will need to conduct entry on a permit require confined space, several regulations apply to the entry procedures. such as pre and post entry communications with applicable employees and contractors, training the entry team, establishing a rescue team, establishing duties for supervisors, entrance, attendance, and rescue or emergency services. Please contact me if your organization needs to develop a written confined space entry program. I'd be more than happy to assist. Some confusion existed when this standard was first implemented regarding attics, basements, and crawl spaces. As you know, these are extremely common in the construction industry. These are not, I repeat, are not permit entry confined spaces unless a hazard is introduced into the work area, such as a live exposed power line. That's why assessment is so important. Employers must refer back to the confined space assessment regulations to determine when a permit is required before entry. And again, that assessment can continue to change based off the job site changing. The standard does mandate specific responsibilities on job sites that contain multi-employers, which is also extremely common in the construction industry. The standard requires regular communications and coordination between all applicable parties on a job site, such as the general contractor and all the subcontractors that may be working in the vicinity of the confined space. Information regarding the job site confined space assessments should be readily available and properly communicated to the lowest levels at the job site. And it's important as subcontractors, before they do their entries, they're coordinating with all the other subs that may be working in the area, as well as communicating after they do the entries, because they may identify some other things in the confined space that were not known why they were doing the entry. It's just important that all this information be coordinated throughout the entire job site. Again, the key to compliance in this area is conducting an assessment and identifying those confined spaces, and when the hazards exist, implementing a written program with permits, and then obviously training the employees as needed. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. A wide range of regulations were covered during the video, and it's likely this may have generated questions specific to your operations. Please feel free to contact me with any of those questions. Regulatory compliance can be difficult, and I welcome the opportunity to assist you. Myself and Leavitt Group appreciate your business. Hope that you found this video and our YouTube channel to be helpful to your insurance and risk management programs. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm here to help with any OSHA compliance questions you may have.